Do you want to know everything about the PlayStation 6? Specs, price, power, games? Well, this might be the only video on YouTube you need to watch to get the best idea of what the PlayStation 6 will bring to the table. Now I know what you're thinking. Who are you to tell me that this is the best video to watch? And you know what? Fair question. So let's look at my credentials. For the past 2 years, I've been studying and covering leaks and rumors on this channel. I successfully dissected all the leaks and rumors about the PS5 Slim. That includes price, release date, and even the design of the PlayStation 5 Slim, including the detachable disc drive. Yeah, all that. And I bought the PS5 Slim Spider-Man 2 bundle the month it was released. Or I think it was December. People who've been with me since those days know what I'm talking about. I've even correctly predicted everything about the PS Portal, from the specs to the release date. And I was one of those naysayers saying, PS Portal will flop hard. And oh, how wrong I was. PS Portal became one of the most successful PlayStation accessories Sony has ever launched. In fact, it was so popular that it sold out every month. And even Sony was shocked at how well it performed. Next up, PS5 Pro. This one I was obsessed with. I was leaking all the right info before anyone else, from the PSSR tech to the performance boost, and even the price. I was the first to tell everyone the PS5 Pro would have no disk drive and would cost around $700 USD, about 4 months before the console's announcement. Oh, and how I was roasted for that. The clickbait, the backlash, the people unsubscribing, the ones saying I was wrong about everything. For a while, I even started doubting myself. But guess what? The announcement happened, and everything I predicted about the PS5 Pro came true. While everyone was losing their minds online about how this thing costs $700 and doesn't include a disk drive. But on the other hand, there's a worrying trend with prices. The base PS5 just got more expensive in Japan, and there aren't any big discounts in the US. Last year, before the PS5 Slim launched, the fat PS5 saw some hefty discounts. I covered that daily. But now prices are going up, and in the best case scenario, the base PS5 price might just stay the same. So, the PS5 Pro, I'm not expecting it to be cheap. A starting price around $650 to $750 seems likely, with $700 being a strong possibility.
Wait, where's the disc? Where's the disc drive? $700 US? Where's the disc drive? Where's the disc? Where's the? You are no.
$700 base. I'm flabbergasted. What an L.
Only showing a digital edition. $699 without a disc drive. Oh god, that's brutal.
I was like, I told you this for months. So yeah, I think I've built a pretty strong track record on PlayStation hardware leaks, and all those videos are still up. You can go fact check me on all of it. Now that we got the credentials out of the way, let's get into the PlayStation 6 details. Make sure to like and subscribe, because you better believe I'll be covering and updating these leaks as they come in. Now let's talk about the price. The PlayStation 6 will most likely cost $700 US. I honestly can't imagine it being cheaper than that. Inflation has been through the roof since COVID. You can't even find a good, reliable, brand new 16 gigabyte graphics card for $500 these days, which is wild in my opinion. $700 for a PS6? Yeah, sounds about right. And honestly, I'm fine with that. $700 is the new $500. Let's be real. Everything is expensive these days. Phones, TVs, rent, chocolate. There's no reason consoles should be immune to that. Do I like it? Heck no. But that's the reality we live in. So Shuhei Yoshida, who was basically the big boss of PlayStation's worldwide studios from 2008 to 2019, is throwing some interesting shade on the whole graphics are everything mentality. The dude was there through the PS3, PS4, and the early PS5 days. So his opinion's not just some random hot take. It's coming from someone who literally helped shape the PlayStation brand for over a decade. Now here's the deal. PlayStation has always been known for pushing visuals to the next level. I mean, from the PlayStation 1 era of blocky 3D to the PlayStation 5's ray tracing magic, it's been a constant race for better graphics. And Sony's built that expectation into their brand. Like, if you're buying a PlayStation, you expect it to blow your mind with how realistic everything looks. But Yoshida's saying that's not enough anymore. Sure, having the best graphics out there is cool and all, but he's suggesting Sony needs to rethink their whole approach if they want want to stay relevant. His exact words, "Up until now, PlayStation's DNA has been driven by values such as cutting-edge graphics that have continued since. Users have also expected that from PlayStation games. However, it's about time we have to reconsider that. Of course, I think it's necessary to provide the very best in terms of graphics quality to those who want it. But in order to continue to be popular with users in a broad sense, we naturally have to change our way of thinking." Basically, he's saying Sony's gotta stop putting all their eggs in the pretty graphics basket. Because yeah, you can make something look gorgeous, but if development takes forever and costs a fortune, you end up with a bunch of studios sinking under their own ambition. And not everyone cares about graphics to the same degree anyway, especially with indie games proving you can do so much with simpler visuals if the gameplay is tight. Think about it. PS5's biggest bragging point when it launched wasn't even graphics. It was speed, faster load times, seamless transitions, that super fast SSD. And Yoshida's looking at that and saying, maybe that's the kind of innovation we should focus on more. Like, what if the PS6 prioritizes things like instant loading, AI integration, better social features, or even improved accessibility options? Stuff that actually changes how we play and experience games, not just how they look. The dude's basically throwing down the gauntlet. Is Sony ready to change how they think about consoles? Or are they gonna keep chasing better visuals until it breaks them? Here's something exciting that could make 8K gaming on the PlayStation 6 not just a marketing buzzword, but an actual realistic feature. At CES 2025, the HDMI forum announced the next-gen HDMI 2.2 standard, which cranks bandwidth all the way up to 96 gigabits per second. Let's break down what that means for the PS6 and gaming in general. The new HDMI 2.2 spec is a massive leap over HDMI 2.1. With this update, you're looking at support for 4K up to 480 Hz, insane refresh rates that might make sense for competitive gamers, 8K up to 240 Hz, yes, native 8K gaming at refresh rates that are ridiculous for any console so far, and that with advanced ray tracing and HDR, and we're talking about visuals that could rival reality. This also addresses one of the main criticisms of 8K gaming. It's been mostly theoretical because of bandwidth limitations. HDMI 2.2 removes that bottleneck, so the hardware won't hold back what developers can create. And with 8K TVs slowly becoming more common, Sony could market the PS6 as the perfect console for high-end home theaters. Here's another benefit. HDMI 2.2 also promises to fix a problem that's plagued home theaters forever. So the main stuff here comes from this leaker, Kepler L2. You might have heard of him. He's the guy who nailed the specs for the PS5 Pro before anyone else. Like, he even talked about how the PS5 Pro would include RDNA 4 features for ray tracing, and that was basically confirmed later. So yeah, he's pretty legit. Now he's saying the PS6 design is done. It's in this stage called pre-silicon validation. Don't worry, I'll explain what that means. Pre-silicon validation is basically when they test the chip design super hard before they actually manufacture it. Kepler also mentioned something called AO tape-out, which is when they physically make the first chip. That's apparently happening late this year. If that timeline holds, we're looking at a release window for the PS6 around 2027. Sony usually takes about 2 years from AO tape-out to console launch. So yeah, 2027 checks out. Now, someone online, probably one of those tech nerds, was worried that Sony might use older tech like N3, which wouldn't be a huge jump from what we have now. But Kepler chimed in and said, nope, some of it could be on N2 tech, which is better. He even dropped Zen 6 into the mix. If you're not familiar, Zen 6 is AMD's upcoming CPU tech, and it's miles ahead of what we've got now. The PS5 and PS5 Pro are running Zen 2 CPUs, which came out back in 2019. If Zen 6 lands in 2026, like the rumors say, the PS6 could launch with that. It would be a massive jump in CPU performance. As for the GPU, Kepler said it's an early fork of AMD's new unified structure, which people online are calling RDNA 5. This is the same tech AMD announced last year, and it's rumored to launch in 2026. And there's this other feature called 3DV cache, which is basically a fancy way of saying the CPU can access info way faster. It stacks more memory on the chip without making it bigger. There's been a lot of chatter lately about Sony possibly working on a new handheld. Some folks are calling it the PS Vita 2. Others are throwing around names like PSP 3. Whatever it ends up being called, the rumor is, it might actually be able to run PS4 games natively, and maybe even some PS5 games, too. That's a bold claim. So yeah, let's break this down like we always do. The big idea here is that Sony's supposedly building this thing with some custom AMD hardware inside. Not just another remote play device like the Portal. This one would actually play games directly, no streaming. So you'd be able to take real PlayStation games with you on the go. Imagine booting up Ghost of Tsushima or Spider-Man 2 on a train. That's the dream, right? And honestly, it's not that far-fetched. The Steam Deck proved that handhelds can pack serious power these days. The tech is there. And with how popular the Nintendo Switch still is, Sony jumping back in now wouldn't be the worst idea, especially since they kinda left a hole in the market after the Vita faded out. Plus, think about the library. There are so many PS4 games that would feel right at home on a portable screen. If they get the controls right and keep the experience smooth, it could be a huge win. But, and there's always a but, people are skeptical. Some are worried this might just be Sony trying to chase the Steam Deck's success. Like, instead of making a unique handheld built around original games, it could end up as just a portable PS5 Lite. Big, clunky, short battery life, and kinda missing its own identity. And to make things more confusing, Sony's also been focused on adding PS3 games to PS5 and messing around with streaming options. So who knows if this handheld idea is even their priority right now. Bottom line, nothing's official. We're deep in rumor territory. But if this actually happens and it plays PlayStation 4 games straight out of the box, that could be something special. So what do you think? Is Sony finally ready to get handheld gaming right this time? Or are we just getting our hopes up again? Let's think this through. If Sony really is working on a PSP3, basically a true handheld that can run games natively, then yeah, that's gonna raise a few eyebrows when you stack it up against the PS Portal. Because here's the thing, the Portal just came out, right? But it's kind of a one-trick pony. Now, imagine Sony drops a PSP3 that doesn't need streaming. It just plays PlayStation 4 and maybe PlayStation 5 games by itself. That instantly makes the Portal feel kinda limited. No? Like, who's gonna drop $200 on a device that requires a PS5 and Wi-Fi, when for maybe a bit more, you could get something that works anywhere and doesn't depend on another console? That's a tough sell. But here's where it gets interesting. These two devices could serve different types of gamers. The Portal is for folks who already own a PS5 and just want to keep gaming around the house. The rumored PSP3, though, that could be for people who want true portability, something they can throw in a bag and take on a trip without worrying about connections or being tethered to their living room. That said, the overlap is real. If the PSP3 ends up being everything people hope for, it kinda steals the Portal's thunder, especially if the price gap isn't huge. So did AMD's work on their AI upscaler overlap with PSSR's development? Did Sony know about this? Or were they forced to push ahead with their own tech because AMD's solution simply wasn't ready when they needed it? So Sony built PSSR because at the time, AMD didn't believe machine learning was necessary for high-quality upscaling. Sony, on the other hand, thought ML-based upscaling was the way forward. So they went ahead and developed their own upscaler, along with a dedicated hardware block to support it. But here's where things get really interesting. Fast forward a bit, and AMD does a complete 180. Suddenly, they're all in on ML upscaling, working on their own AI-powered tech. And not only that, Sony and AMD have now formed a partnership specifically for AI development. Now this raises a huge question. If AMD is already putting resources into FSR4, why would Sony keep investing in PSSR? Doesn't that just seem like a waste of time, money, and effort? Originally, the logic behind PSSR made a lot of sense. Sony needed an ML-based upscaler, and AMD wasn't offering one. PSSR can deliver results that rival native 4K rendering. Games like The Last of Us, Part 1, and Spider-Man 2 are excellent examples. In The Last of Us, PSSR delivers crisp visuals with high-res rendering and smooth frame rates. Honestly, it's almost indistinguishable from native 4K in some scenarios. Similarly, Spider-Man 2 and Ratchet & Clank showcase beautiful ray-traced reflections that demonstrate what PSSR can do when paired with high-quality rendering pipelines. It's clear that with the right setup, this tech can elevate gaming visuals to a whole new level. But here's where things get messy. Games like Silent Hill 2, Jedi Survivor, and even Dragon's Dogma 2 show PSSR at its worst. The ray-traced lighting in these games often appears noisy, and in some cases, the upscaling is so poorly implemented that it actually looks worse than older techniques like TAA or even FSR. Take Silent Hill 2, for example. The reflections are muddy, and the overall image quality is a significant downgrade compared to other titles using similar tech. And Jedi Survivor? Let's just say the issues with foliage flickering and noisy reflections make it clear that PSSR isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. So, why do some games excel while others flop? It boils down to implementation. Digital Foundry points out that PSSR performs best with less demanding scenarios, games targeting higher internal resolutions with fewer ray-traced effects. However, when you throw complex lighting, reflections, and low-res input into the mix, PSSR struggles to keep up. Another issue is developer resources. Not every studio has the time or budget to optimize PSSR for their game. In fact, some titles, like Alan Wake 2, shipped with glaring visual issues that make you wonder how they passed QA at all. Here's the big question: can PSSR improve over time? Similar to how NVIDIA's DLSS evolved dramatically from its early versions, PSSR could benefit from continued training and refinement. One interesting suggestion from Digital Foundry is adding a system-level toggle for users to update PSSR independently, allowing improvements to roll out across all games. That would be a game changer for titles stuck with older implementations like Jedi Survivor. However, it remains to be seen if Sony will go this route. At the end of the day, PSSR is a promising technology. We already got 4 PlayStation 6 games confirmed. Until now, we had 3. The first one that is confirmed to be at least a cross-platform game is The Witcher 4. That game doesn't come out until 2027, maybe even 2028. Another one is a next-gen Call of Duty game, confirmed to be coming to the next-gen Xbox, aka PlayStation, because we all know that today, if you buy a PlayStation, you get an Xbox for free. Third one is a confirmed game from reliable leakers, like Jeff Grub and Tom Henderson. And that one is coming from none other than Hideo Kojima. Now, for the fourth one, we just got news that Warner Brothers are working on a game that's supposedly built for next-gen hardware. Now, Rocksteady, the studio behind Arkham Knight, has been pretty quiet since the whole Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League situation. And by situation, I mean total flop. That game was supposed to be this big, ongoing live service title for Warner Brothers, and instead it crashed hard. Sales were rough, the reception was colder than Mr. Freeze, and WB ended up pulling the plug faster than expected. So, what's Rocksteady doing now? Apparently going back to what they do best, a single-player Batman game. There's no official title yet, and technically the game hasn't even been announced, but the hiring ads are giving it all away. A new job listing for a senior engine programmer just casually mentions that the project is for the next generation of consoles. And no, the listing doesn't say Batman by name, but at this point, it's a pretty open secret. Bloomberg already hinted at it in a report on Warner Brothers' recent struggles, and after the Suicide Squad flop, it only makes sense for Rocksteady to bring the Caped Crusader back to the spotlight. Now here's the thing, it's not a PS5 exclusive like some folks were speculating. There was a rumor floating around about a Batman Beyond game being made just for PS5, but yeah, this job listing clears that up. The next game is going to be multi-platform, built in Unreal Engine 5, and targeting PS5 series PC and the next generation of hardware. So it's a cross-gen title, kind of like what GTA 6 is doing. And honestly, that makes total sense. If this Batman game drops in, say, 2027 or 2028, which lines up with when PlayStation 6 is rumored to launch, it'd be a bad look if it was stuck on what'll be last-gen hardware by then. But at the same time, not everyone's going to upgrade instantly, so having it on PS5 and Xbox Series keeps the base wide. As for what kind of Batman game this will be, no one really knows yet. Could be a fresh start, could be tied to the Arkham universe somehow. Maybe even linked to James Gunn's DC cinematic reboot. All we know is Rocksteady is hiring like crazy using top-tier tech and needs a win. Ready? Let's get into it. When the PlayStation 5 launched in November 2020, it arrived during a transitional period in graphics card technology. Nvidia had recently unveiled its powerful RTX 30 series, including the RTX 3070, RTX 3080, and RTX 3090, which marked a big step forward in performance from the previous generation. Meanwhile, AMD was just rolling out its RX 6000 series. These new cards were all part of the push toward ray tracing and higher frame rates, signaling a new era of PC gaming capabilities. While these graphics cards delivered cutting-edge performance, they were notoriously hard to find at launch due to high demand and limited supply. Many gamers were left competing with bots and scalpers just to get their hands on one. Even before the 30 series and RX 6000 series came out, solid choices like the RTX 20 series and AMD's RX 5000 series were still in use by plenty of PC gamers. In other words, there was a wide range of GPUs available, but everyone had their eyes on the latest, greatest models. The PS5 itself featured a custom AMD GPU based on RDNA 2, making it quite advanced for a console. Sony's engineers optimized the entire system to push out impressive visuals and fast loading times. Games such as Demon's Souls and Spider-Man Miles Morales showcased ray tracing and high frame rates, showing players that a console could indeed offer experiences that felt on par with decent gaming rigs. Moreover, with next-gen SSD technology, the PS5 also made loading screens almost non-existent, which was a big selling point at the time. Comparing the PS5 to most gaming PCs back then is a bit tricky. High-end rigs equipped with RTX 3080 or 3090 cards, or AMD's top-tier RX 6000 series, definitely outperformed the PS5 in sheer power. Still, these setups were usually a lot more expensive and required careful part selection. Mid-tier PCs, however, often found themselves lagging behind the PS5's performance and efficiency, especially when factoring in cost. In many cases, buying a PS5 became a simpler route to enjoying next-gen features without the hassle or expense of an upgraded PC. When it comes to gaming on a budget, the PS5 and PS5 Pro are total game changers. Let's break down why they outperform similarly priced PCs in terms of performance, usability, and value. First off, the PS5 is built specifically for gaming excellence. With its custom AMD Zen 2 CPU and RDNA 2 GPU, it pushes out over 10 teraflops of graphical power. That means it can target 4K resolution at 60 frames per second and sometimes even hit 120. Compare that to a $500 PC from 2020. You're probably looking at a GTX 1660 or RX 5500 XT. Those GPUs were decent, but they were made for 1080p gaming and maybe 1440p if you're lucky. Not the PS5's smooth 4K performance. And storage? The PS5 blows budget PCs out of the water. It comes with an 825 gig custom NVMe SSD that hits speeds of 5.5 gigs per second. Load times are practically non-existent. A $500 PC usually has a slower hard drive with speeds around 500 megabytes per second. That's not just slower, it's a totally different level. Some games like Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart wouldn't even be possible on hardware that limited. Sure, PCs have upgradability, but at this price point, you're making big compromises on key parts like cooling or RAM. Plus, upgrading means spending even more money later. The PS5, on the other hand, is a plug-and-play powerhouse ready to go right out of the box. Now let's turn up the heat. The PS5 Pro launching at $700 takes everything great about the base model and makes it even better. With a GPU pushing nearly 17 teraflops and enhanced ray tracing, this console targets 4K gaming at higher frame rates along with AI-driven upscaling for sharper visuals. Meanwhile, a $700 PC might come with a Ryzen 5 7600 and an RX 6700 XT. It's a solid setup, but in real-world gaming performance, it still falls short. Why? Optimization. The PS5 Pro doesn't have to deal with countless hardware configurations. It's built for maximum efficiency. While your PC might hit 4K in simpler games, the PS5 Pro consistently delivers that cinematic experience across AAA titles. Add in features like PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, Wi-Fi 7, and VRR. So let's talk about the potential power of the PlayStation 6. For FSR 4 and frame generation. Sure, these features are still a bit controversial, but Digital Foundry's analysis shows they're improving. Ghosting and artifacts are slowly becoming less of an issue.
But the ghosting is even more pronounced there on the left and almost completely eliminated on the right. General stability and ray reconstruction detail levels are also much improved. Check out this sequence here as we move forwards and backwards. There's a shimmer in the mid-distance that shouldn't really be there. And when we move to the transformer model, again, that shimmering is much reduced and essentially a non-issue.
Now think about this. In 2 years, we'll probably have another generation of GPUs like RDNA 5 or something along those lines. Consoles usually launch at a price similar to a mid-range GPU. So if the PS6 comes out priced between $600 and $700, we could be looking at raw power close to an RTX 5080 or maybe even a 5090. And before anyone says there's no way they can put a 5080 into a $600 console, let me stop you right there. How many times do we have to explain this? Sony isn't out here buying MSRP graphics cards and sticking them in a console. They're building a complete package designed to optimize every component. It's a totally different approach. Alright, so here's the deal. When it comes to how Sony gets their hardware, it's not like they're buying GPUs from AMD, the way you'd grab a graphics card for your PC. Instead, they work closely with AMD to create custom chips that are purpose-built for PlayStation consoles. Take the PS5, for example. Sony worked with AMD to design a custom chip called an APU, or Accelerated Processing Unit. This combines both the CPU and GPU into a single chip, which makes it more efficient for gaming. Since Sony is ordering millions of these chips, the cost per unit drops significantly. What might cost a PC gamer $300 to $500 for a standalone GPU costs Sony a fraction of that, sometimes as low as $20 or $50 per chip. But it's not just about cheap hardware. Sony designs the entire system, cooling, power delivery, and even software around that custom chip. That's why PlayStation consoles feel so optimized for gaming. Every piece of the hardware and software is working together to get the most out of that APU. Now we've got the PS5 Pro, and people are comparing it to an RTX 4070. And PC gamers are up in arms. How dare they?
How dare you! You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. And yet, I'm one of the lucky ones.
Okay, so what else do you compare it to? A $700 PC? Even the base PS5 outperforms $700 PCs in gaming. It's all right there in the numbers. Let's be real though, chasing 8K resolutions and ridiculous pixel counts isn't even the priority anymore. Upscaling tech is where the real innovation is happening, and it's already closing the gap in ways raw power alone can't. And yeah, sure, the new 50 series cards are beating the PS5 Pro when it comes to raw performance. No one's arguing that. The 5070 Ti costs $750 by itself, and the 5090, that thing annihilates the PS5 Pro, but it's a $2,500 GPU. Add in the rest of the PC build, and you're talking about a $4,000 rig. If someone says a $4,000 PC destroys a PS5 Pro, well, no kidding. That's not even a debate. That's like saying a supercar outruns a commuter car. It's obvious. Now take that kind of power and imagine it in the PlayStation 6. With how technology is advancing, it's totally possible. Personally, I'd prefer if the PS6 launched in 2028 to give the Pro more time to shine, but all signs are pointing to a 2027 release. What do you think? Are you ready for the next step, or do you want more time with what we've got now?
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh la la! Oh, king in the castle, king in the castle. Have a chair, I have a chair.